If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Arman Fadi, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest is a Jeff Serafin black belt, a top-level competitor, and trains with one of the best teams in the world. Chris Wojcik joins us to discuss why he is less attached to results and is now focused on chasing skills, the new black belt standards, being flexible in mind and body, and a ton more. Here is the RŌL Radio with creator of the Grappler's Diary, content creator at Jiu-Jitsu X and BJJ Fanatics, and fourth place finisher at the West Coast ADCC Trials, Chris Wojcik.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we're live.
Yeah, here we are.
Another great conversation ahead of us.
You think so?
Why? Yes. Not thanks to you.
You always say that, so I like to just throw a little curveball.
Always. Well, right before we start recording, Chris, welcome to the show, by the way. But right before we start recording, you made a suggestion. Glasses off is better looking. Gary, can you take your glasses off, please?
It's not going to help.
Back on though.
we can darken my screen, take me off, just turn my camera off. That's the only way it's going to get better on my end.
Chris, officially, welcome to the show. Thanks for giving us a little bit of your life, a little bit of your day. But what a rich and interesting journey for you. Do you feel like that you've accomplished a lot in what Jiu-Jitsu has to offer in your particular case, in your life, in your journey?
It's funny. I think that when I think in retrospect, like when I look back and I think about like day one Chris, like if you had told day one Chris that everything that has happened to me in jiu-jitsu was going to happen, I would have told you that you were insane. But then at the same time, like when I think like forward and I think about what I still want to accomplish, I feel like I've done nothing so far, you know? So it's like depending on the perspective.
Well, and that always creates an interesting pivot of discussion like this, right? Because things that we've done in the past, they appear to be easy at this point of time, yet we are looking out in the future, and oftentimes with goals or desires that we have out what is ahead of us, you know, there's still obstacles, things to be completed. You said that there was so much to be done. Why do you think that perspective comes in such a black and white scenario? Meaning, in a sense, if I asked you, a few years back, you would say you're out of your mind. Yet today, it appears like this was easy, wasn't it?
I think that when I look back, I don't know if it was if I see it as easy, there are some things that I look back and they were really hard for me, and I'm like, oh, that was easy. There are some things that I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, this was like something really difficult that I overcame, and I'm proud of that. But like, it's I don't know what makes, certain accomplishments feel better. Like some accomplishments age well and some don't. And it's not even like about what the title is or, achievement. It's certain things age better than others. In retrospect, and it's weird. It's more about what you experience, I think, than what you do.
So what experience or what event in your life ages slow, as you refer to it? What sticks around for a long time in your mind?
So in 2021, I did my first ADCC trials. I was a brown belt at the time, and I lost in the second round, and I got submitted. Um, and then 5 months later, I did my second ADCC trials, and I managed to take fourth place, and I took out a couple of top seeds along the way, and I had a very good performance. And then a few weeks after that, I ended up beating an ADCC veteran, winning this like huge cash bracket, and getting my black belt like the 2 days after that. And I think that was like one of those periods where like when that whole thing happened, I felt like I was living in a movie, like I was in a action movie or something. If it was about jiu-jitsu, and then like I was in my Rocky movie. And then like that, when I look back at that, I'm like, oh, that aged well. But then when I think about like I did the ADCC trials in Europe, and I went up in weight because of an injury, because I wasn't training, I couldn't really cut, I was barely training. I you know went to a weight class I had never done before against bigger opponents, and I took third, which is something I should be more proud of, I think. But I like when I look back, I'm like, God, why didn't I win? You know. So it's like that first period when I was like it was my first kind of step onto the highest levels of competitive jiu-jitsu. That first jump really ages well for me, because that's when I went from being like a competitor who was trying to be really good to a competitor who was like doing the thing, versus like now it's like we're splitting. It's like the steps are smaller, I feel like, but more difficult to take.
Do you feel like the personal expectations of yourself is increasing as you're noticing more success, and as some of those items that perhaps were not reachable recently, now they are at the grasp of your hands, of your fingers?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Like I feel like as you get to a higher level, your expectations only grow, and the work that's required to reach those expectations becomes so much bigger. Like you have to do so much more to go like not as far. Does that make sense?
No,
Like,
absolutely.
as a
Absolutely.
black belt, you're like, to learn new, like to go from white to blue belt is way easier than trying to go from black belt to world class black belt.
Yeah, there's levels, right?
Yeah.
There's Gary, are you still in? Because
I'm not. I got
you lost
kicked
it.
out.
Okay, well, come back in.
I'm trying.
We need you here. But listen, that puts it in an interesting spin on life, I suppose, and what we are trying to achieve in life, not only on the mat but also off the mat. But more success we gain and more of the milestones we achieve, the end result, it keeps moving forward. And I guess the $1 million question here is: is it worth to chase the next shiny object, or the next goal that we set for ourselves? How do you view this from your perspective?
That's a good question. I think that over the last few years, I've become less. Oh, something happened. Hold on. Sorry. I've become less. So I think over the last few years, I've become less attached to like individual results, and I've become more interested in like investing myself in the process, because I feel like chasing the process is the only source of sustainable motivation. Like chasing skills, or as opposed to chasing medals, because you can have like the perfect training camp, the perfect like weight cut, everything can go perfect, and then something happens when you are like competing. Maybe you get an injury, maybe you just twist weird and something happens with your knee, or maybe the ref makes a mistake. You know, he doesn't even try to screw you, but he makes a mistake and you lose because of that. Or it's like one small thing happens in a match and then you lose and you don't get the result that you want despite doing all of the perfect work. And then the question becomes, was all of that work for nothing? And I don't think it was. I think that the things that you learn, the skills that you take from those experiences are extremely valuable. And so I think that, especially as I've gotten to like black belt, and now it's like progress is so much, it takes so much more work to make minute progress at this point. I think that I've tried to focus more on like day-to-day skills and day-to-day training as opposed to like just chasing a goal like ADCC or something like that. Obviously it's still a goal, but it's not. I'm more interested in just becoming the best grappler I can be.
But at the same time, I mean, Chris, let's be honest. I mean, you know, you are in a competition world without the winnings, without some of those milestones. How do you gauge the progress? I mean, ultimately, if you want to be the best of the best of the best, then you have to beat some of the other guys who are the best of the best. So it's almost like the conversation: what came first, chicken or an egg? Like you need to win in order for you to succeed. Yet we are saying that we're not chasing the winning; we're chasing the progress, and it is always the interesting, you know, dynamic when all of this is unfolding, isn't it?
I think that if you are chasing the progress like truthfully and you're doing the right things, and if you are truly making progress, the winning will come. And if the winning is not coming, I think that you need to figure out why that's happening and do something different to go back to chasing the progress. I've been training quite a bit with Joseph Chen over the last few months, and he's like 8 years younger than me, and I learned this like philosophical perspective from him. But he, like, the way he trains is very kind of like skill oriented, and that has sort of propelled him over the last like 3 years from being like this sort of, you know, he came into B team as like a 16-year-old kid, and now he's like in ADCC, and the way he's training is very skill oriented. It's not really results oriented, and he's still getting the results because the skills are coming.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you is that you want to get better, and everything else will become a consequence of your hard work.
Essentially, yeah. And if you are working hard and not getting the results that you want, that's when we want to look at working smarter. But
right, because technically, if you're not getting the results, then you're probably not doing what you said you would be doing, causing the domino effect of no results, right? So
yeah,
constant evaluation of what is happening and what we are doing and how successful we are is probably a big part of all this big process that we're trying to evolve, right?
Yeah. And so, like, for me, I think that I try to view, so each competition is a test of where I'm at. And if the competition goes well, it's like, okay, this was really good. Obviously, there are still things that we can improve, but this was a good indicator that what I've been doing is working. And if the competition goes terribly, I don't immediately go to, oh, I suck, my preparation was terrible. I go to, why did I lose? What went wrong? And is that an indicator of poor preparation? Is that an indicator of it just wasn't my day? Is that an indicator that, you know, of some other factor that I need to understand? And I try to, and I don't always manage to do this, but I try to be as objective when I view my results. I try to view them as I would view the results of someone else.
So I think interesting, Gary, why do I hear you echoing?
Because you didn't turn on the echo cancellation. It's not the first time we've done this.
Oh my God, you're a disaster here.
Chris, can you hear me?
I hear an echo that I didn't hear before.
So I don't have internet, but I can go through Thomas's computer. So if you hear me chime in,
Why don't you just drop off?
Yeah, I'm going to drop off Riverside, but
Yeah.
I'll be able to still talk to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
There you go. All right.
Go. Yeah, keep going.
Gary always manages to screw up the episode. You know what I mean? It's like
You should fire me. Fire me.
No, because then who's going to do all the work?
Take yourself. This is how we now we know how to make me look better, right? Going back to the start, you just kick me off the feet. Here we go.
There you go. There you go. Now I lost track of like what we were talking about. We were getting deep on this. Chris, where were you?
We were talking about. I had just said that I try to view my results as if I'm viewing them.
Right. But what you're describing, I mean, first of all, this is deep. Everything that you're saying, you're looking at.
Yeah, we started off deep today.
Yeah, I know. Like, I mean, and Gary's ruined the whole thing. Like, I was getting smarter for a second, okay? But no, look, it's like what you were describing is looking at your own progress as evaluation, essentially, as a third party. So you're looking at it as a perspective from the outside, and that allows you to be not necessarily judgmental, but have a little bit clearer view of what is happening and the actions that have to take place. So what I'm hearing from you is that not necessarily I suck, but I cannot improve unless I identify areas that I need to get better. And then this continuous approach to see what I need to change, how I change it, and then what is the result gets you a continuous progress into the direction that you desire, essentially. Am I hearing you correct on this?
Yes.
So how come not everybody's doing this? I mean, this sounds pretty simple.
That's a good question.
How come, I mean, literally, I would say 95, if not higher percentage of Jiu-Jitsu students do not have that approach. They don't.
So, yeah, that's true. I think that when I think like a lot of people in Jiu-Jitsu are very results oriented. I think that like people want to go to Jiu-Jitsu, they want to see, oh, I learned this technique and it worked. They want to see, oh, I've been training and that's why I got my blue belt, or oh, I trained really hard, that's why I got a medal at my competition. And I get it, because I was that person. And then I think that for me, I've gotten my black belt. I won a world championship at the lower belt, I've medaled in trials and stuff like that, and I've competed against really good guys. And you get to a point where you're just like, the only way that I can continue to satisfy my results-driven mindset is by getting results that are like extremely difficult and extremely competitive to achieve, and it negatively impacts my quality of life, right? So like if I lose a match, I don't want to let that like ruin my jiu-jitsu experience for an extended period of time. I don't want to like lose a match and then go back to training like hating myself because I didn't win, or when in reality there are so many factors that determine winning that are some of which are out of your control, some of which are things that you like I lost a match at trials recently because of a rule thing that I didn't understand, that no one had taught me before. And it's like, am I going to allow that loss to ruin the training for the next event, or am I going to just take the lesson and just move on to the next thing? And it's like I didn't perform right as well at the last trials as I did the one prior where I had won a medal, but I think I was a better grappler the next time around. And a hole in my game was exploited, and instead of being like emotional and results oriented, I'm results oriented, right? I'm not happy about that. Like, I'm not saying I'm happy about it, but I think that it's easier to be resilient when you are viewing things a little bit more holistically. And I think most people are not put in positions where they need to view things holistically.
Do you think that jiu-jitsu would be a much better environment from a success perspective if everybody would have that approach to jiu-jitsu?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like, I think that you have to, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Sloan. He's a black belt at Legion.
We had him on. Yeah, we had him on.
I like Sloan. He's
he's
one of the best.
Super good guy.
Yeah, super good guy. He's got one of the best guillotines I've ever felt. But we were talking about how about work smart, not hard. I think that in order to have the luxury of working smart as opposed to only working hard, you have to work extremely hard for a very long period of time. Like, you can't just start out working smart and not hard, because you're not at the baseline level where that little thing is going to make a difference.
Translate this into average Joe Schmo Jiu-Jitsu language.
Okay, so I think that, like, if you don't go through that period where you're like pushing yourself and being extremely results oriented, you're not going to reach the level where you're able to view things as, like, where you're able to zoom out and be objective.
I wish more people thought that way. Go ahead, Gary.
Was this something that you came to gradually, or something that happened all at once? Because like we had Travis Stevens on, and he had to throw a chair, and he had to quit, and he, and MF everybody before he came to the realization that he doesn't need to be like this. So did it happen? Was there a singular event, or is this just a gradual maturity?
I think it's a gradual maturity. I definitely think that if you had told, like, I started doing jiu-jitsu when I was 17. I'm 26 now. I think if you had told me at like 19 when I was a blue belt that this is the way to longer progress, I would have told you that you're out of your mind.
Okay, well, but this puts us in an interesting point of the conversation, right? Because essentially what we are saying is that you need to grind it at the beginning to put yourself in a position where we can step outside of this bubble and you can have a clear perspective of what's happening inside in order for you to progress and just get smart about all of this, right? The catch-22 behind this whole thought is that most people quit before they get to that point, right? They either get discouraged, give up, they hit plateaus, whatever the reasoning today is. And this is why this percentage of people who do achieve level of black belt is so small. I mean, it's larger today than it used to be, but it's still very, very small, right?
I don't know if more people are getting, like, I think more people are getting their black belts, but I also think more people are training. So I don't know if the percentage has even really gone up very much. I just think that more people are.
People are calling you.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on airplane
that's
mode.
That's your agent calling.
I'm sorry. I'm on airplane mode now. I'm sorry. I should have done that before. But I was just saying that I think more people are training now. So I don't know if even the percentage of people getting their black belt is that much higher. I just think that there's more people starting.
You might be right. My perception might be skewed. I mean, when I was starting, and you know Jeff very well. I mean, Jeff somewhat around the same time. I mean, it was like we talk about it on the show. We talk about this on the show so often. Like when we were starting, seeing a blue belt was like a unicorn. A purple belt was not heard of, and brown belt was like a lord that you were bowing to. Like, today life is very different. The saturation of jiu-jitsu and accessibility of jiu-jitsu is so much larger that anybody can essentially, short of you living somewhere, in a very secluded area, any major city has multiple, if not dozens, of jiu-jitsu academies, and accessibility to it is so much larger. As a consequence of that, more people try. And I think we do see more black belts. Just I don't know what the percentage ratio is. So you might have a valid point there. Maybe it's still not that easy to get to the black belt.
I think that both perspectives are true though, because I think like when you made that point about how like when you started there were no blue belts, like I can't imagine. So I think that it's like it's worth thinking about, because like I didn't train. Like when I started, my coach was a black belt. There was another black belt on the mat. Like it was a thing, versus like now it's like, God, there's so many black belts, but there's also more people. So it is like, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, and like I was lucky to like start with Carson Gracie Sr., so I always had a black belt that, to look up to. But even in those scenarios, like I remember that the room was full of white belts, and there was maybe one or two blue belts, and like higher you went on the ranks, it was less and less people, and it truly felt like. I mean, I remember people telling me that I'll never get to the black belt. Like people flat out told me, like, you will never get there. Like this is not even achievable to, not accessible to you. Different environments back then, which I think, do you feel that today becoming a black belt is not necessarily easier, but more accessible to a student than it used to be when you started?
I think yes. I think that becoming like a good black belt is equally as difficult as it's I think been. But that's when we're splitting hairs, right? Because now it's just like getting to the belt. All you have to do is start training and then don't quit and keep showing up, and
Yeah.
that's how you get your black belt. That's it. Now, trying to be like a good black belt is much harder. And not all, and I wrote about this in a post the other day, like not all black belts are the same. And the like black belts today are both better and worse than they've ever been.
Explain
Like,
that. Because
like
I
the
actually
best,
agree well with this, but yeah, explain that. What does that mean in your mind?
like the best black belts in the world are better than the best black belts of 10 years ago. But the worst black belts in the world are worse than the worst black belts of 10 years ago. And this is like, as jiu-jitsu gets more popular and more people are training, you're just going to have people who are not as good getting to the black belt. And
So,
that's just part of what happens.
so essentially, you're saying the spectrum of a black belt rank is just much larger now from a skill
Yes.
set perspective, right?
Yes.
Is that a right
Exactly.
thing? Do you agree with that approach, or do you feel like there should be certain expectations before you reach a level of black belt?
I think it's a good thing. I think that most people are aware enough to like, there's a difference between hobbyist black belt who trains, a couple days a week and has a kid and he's in his 40s and he doesn't, jiu-jitsu is a hobby to him, and then, Ty Rotolo or whatever. Like
Right.
there's a difference, and not all black belts should be judged by the standard of professional competitors. And especially now, as jiu-jitsu is becoming a professional sport in a way, it's
Hmm.
it's still in its infancy as a professional sport, but like compared to how it is when I started, the level is so much higher. But at the same time, there's also like high level grapplers who are just not as good as like it was a more select group of people back in the day, and now
Oh,
it's like a little bit more accessible, but the best guys are way better.
yeah, that definitely is. You make a valid point. I do have to, in a sense, highlight the fact that I do actually think that jiu-jitsu is professional today. And again, I come from different perspective. I remember Stefan Bonner, rest in peace, getting ready for Tough One, and he was getting peanuts for it. And
Hmm.
today you can make a very comfortable living in jiu-jitsu. Now you got to get to that top 1%, of really performance or exposure, because that's another factor
Mm,
behind all of this, right? There are guys out there who, they don't compete, they don't have a desire to compete. However, they have built a certain following in a sense, and they do produce certain, content, whatever that means. They inspire people in a certain way, and obviously they can generate, their income that way. So there's
mhm,
multiple ways how all of this can be sliced in a sense of, which again
mhm,
creates this interesting perspective, right? Like, who is better, the competitor who is winning the championships, or the guy who is inspiring people online, or the coach who is a black belt at the same time, but without him the other guys wouldn't exist either. So do you feel like that there are different buckets of these individuals who fall into the same rank?
I think that a lot of people are quick to dismiss people who don't compete, and I think that's a mistake. Um, I think that, for me, I was always interested in competition, like ever since I started, and it was just kind of a path that I naturally gravitated towards. But like one day I'm not going to want to do it anymore, And it's like when I stop competing, does that mean that my jujitsu is now not valuable, or is it more complicated than that? And I definitely think it's more complicated than that. I think that no matter where you are on your journey in jujitsu, you can always help someone. You can help someone who's a step behind you. You can help someone by, like I train with Nick Rod every day, and Nick Rod is a step ahead of me, maybe a few steps ahead of me, a few sizes bigger than me. And but I'm still helping him prepare for matches. And does that doesn't mean that I'm like useless. I still have a use for people who are ahead of me, and then like people who are like blue belts or purple belts, or even black belts who are like or even people like my level. Like we show each other things, we all help each other. Wherever you are, you can always help someone. So I think that it really is more about what you offer as opposed to just what identity you have.
I do have to congratulate you on this very open-minded approach to jiu-jitsu in life. Like, not a lot of people view the way how you are describing it today. A lot of people out there are very self-driven in a sense. It's all about me, you know. The investment into me is more important than investment into others, and regardless of their level of expertise, you know, it is very much so dollar driven or success driven, and some of the things that you talked about in the past or just recently, very much so driven based on the success of whatever is desired for that individual. What you are describing is putting others in front of you, even though you're still chasing your own success and you want to improve. You are describing, I have to contribute to this community in a sense, to this group in order for us all to level up. Am I hearing this correct?
Yeah, and I think that perspective really comes from Jeff. My original coach, Jeff Serafin. I think he was like probably the best like jujitsu mentor I could have had. I like stumbled upon him just because his gym was the closest to my house, and that was how I started training. And I think that he has a very open-minded approach, like way more than a lot of gyms. And so like I started training with him, and everything was like casual but still very high level. And it was like you've trained with Jeff, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a blend of like laid back and high level detail instruction that I don't see a lot of it. And I've been all around the world at this point training, and I don't see that kind of mix a lot of other places. Like it's kind of like that sort of open-mindedness that made me very, I think I took that as the normal thing right away, because that was where I started. I'm like lucky in that regard.
Yeah, you are a lucky cat, and I mean, I know Jeff well, and I even publicly say Jeff is like, shout out to Jeff, by the way.
Yeah, shout
But
out to Jeff.
Jeff is like, in my opinion, Jeff is like, a diamond that not a lot of discovered. Like, he is so casual and chilled back by nature, that yet the skill level that he introduces and brings to the table, it's, I mean, just mind blowing. It's ridiculous, So like sometimes I scratch my head and like think about, like Jeff should be the Jeff, but that's Jeff is such a humble guy. So I love the fact that he's succeeding now, that there's new place coming up. Like, I'm really stoked about this. Recently, him and we exchanged some messages, and I'm like, I can't wait to see, all of this. So it's good to see that positive attitude, the positive approach to life really kind of rubbed off on you. And now, I mean, look at you, right? You making your contribution, and you are motivating people, and you continue walking that path in a sense, right? And showing a lot of people the wisdoms that you have discovered. Let's take this back. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that like one thing that Jeff did really well when I was like, because I met Jeff when I was like 18, so I was 17, so it's like you're at that age where you're like really looking for like role models,
Mm-hmm.
And I met him at like the right time, to where it was like the stuff, and I spent a lot of time with the guy, like a lot of time rolling with the guy, talking with him, just different stuff. And I think that like all of the stuff that I learned, it just kind of became like an integral part of like how I think about like jujitsu and like the world. I'm like, well, like sometimes if I'm in a situation in jujitsu, I'll just be like, well, what would Jeff do?
That's
And
a T-shirt right there. What would Jeff do?
You don't even have to change many of the letters, right? From the what would Jesus do?
Well, but that's again, that is a testimonial to who we are and what we do. And just like you looked up to Jeff and a handful of others in your life, and they embedded those seeds inside you and allowed you to grow. Now you are, in a sense, doing the same. And as things progress in your career, at some point, just like you said, you probably are going to stop competing at some point. Like we all do, short of you being Magaton, because that,
Yeah.
he's crazy. But
He's the exception that makes the rule.
Oh, Jesus Lord. But I love watching him. Now I'm pivoting, but like I love watching him compete. Like the things that he does at his age is ridiculous. But anyway,
Yeah.
that contribution is huge to the community and to what we do and how we surround us and who we surround ourselves with. Now, none of this can really happen unless we start jiu-jitsu. And that first day, it's a big part of our conversations with every guest that we have on the show. But I will ask you the same as I have all the other guys before. Do you remember your first day?
I do. So my first day was not with Jeff. It was actually with a guy named Albert, who is now a brown belt under Jeff. And what happened was I trained with Albert for a few months, and his gym eventually merged with Jeff's, and it was just like, they kind of ended up working together. But at first, I was just taking basically a fundamentals class with Albert, and we did close guard arm bars. And I remember that I went through it, and I didn't know that you were supposed to tap. So I was like letting my arm break in this arm bar, and the Albert ended up running over, stopping the guy and telling me, "Hey, you have to tap when it's hurting." And I was like eating it, like just letting my arm extend. Because I thought it was I thought if I tapped, I was like a loser or whatever. I didn't know.
Well,
that
yeah,
it was
that's
okay.
what you got to do. You got to break arms on the first day.
I didn't know that it was like it was like okay. That was like the first 6 months of jiu-jitsu, I think, were me just accepting that it's okay to tap out sometimes.
But at the same time, how many new students today they go through the same process?
Yeah. So I had a extra, like, I had a problem where I got like positive reinforcement of the power of not tapping, because then after the class I rolled with Albert, and we were rolling. I took him down. He started standing, and I wrestled. So I was fresh out of high school wrestling. I took him down. I was like in close guard. He put me in a triangle like right away. And I'm laughing thinking about this. I stayed in that triangle for 4.5 minutes. And I just I didn't tap. I was like fighting like hell. I was flipping. I got out eventually after his like leg cramped from 4 minutes of trying to triangle me. And he's like, "Dude, you just won," because I took him down and then I didn't tap. And in my head, I'm like, "Oh wow, I'm so good. I beat the coach on the first day." And then like it was all downhill from there. The next few weeks, I just kept getting I just got tapped every day.
Just demolished.
I was like, what happened to my beginner's luck, And that was like my first experience with jiu-jitsu, was just really not wanting to tap and eventually learning that it's okay to tap.
Why do you think it's so difficult for us to tap?
It's I mean, I think that, maybe a cop-out answer, but I think it's just an ego thing. You don't want to admit that you are because the tap signifies like an inadequacy of knowledge.
But wait a minute. But wait a minute. It's your first day. It's your first week, first month. Are we really that stupid that we have an expectation that we're going to come in our first day, first week, first month, and we are not going to be compromised?
So I mean, in hindsight, I think I agree with you, but I think that coming in, a lot of people are like mystified as to what jiu-jitsu is, and they just want to show that they're I'm game, and so they don't want to give up. And it's maybe it's a competitiveness thing. You don't want to admit that someone who you some random person can just fold you like laundry against your will. But people, for some reason, people don't want to tap on, especially beginners.
Yeah. Would you consider that one of the bigger lessons in jiu-jitsu journey and just in general for every student? The ability to recognize and
yes.
let go?
I think learning how to tap, I think that was one thing that we'll do with Jeff, when I was a blue belt, we would do positional rounds from inside a triangle. And when you're doing that, you just tap so much. You because you're starting so far behind that you're there's an ego death that happens. You're like, oh, you got me. And then you get put in it again. You're still catching your breath from the last one. Then you get put in it again. You get tapped 6 times in 2 minutes. And it's okay, well, I'm humbled now,
I'm laughing because I mean, I remember my beginnings at Carson Seniors. You know, he was notorious to put us with the biggest guys in the room, and like, you know, Miguel Torres was one of the smaller guys, and he always went with, like, we were all I mean, every single time we were there, just he found the biggest guys. I mean, like 250, and just he goes, "Go, you on the bottom, you on top, boom. If you escape from him, you escape from everybody." Man, nobody escaped. That was a slaughter. that was a slaughterhouse. And I just, like, now in the retrospect, thinking about it, I just see him like sitting in the corner and just laughing. I was like, "Oh, these stupid guys! They think they know jiu-jitsu," and you know. But in a sense, these lessons, because that's what they are, right? I mean, our brain is developing in essentially a numbness to this anxiety that takes place under stress, right? Because whether you're in triangle on the bottom of side control and somebody's putting their own will against yours, there is a sense of anxiety, right? That we go through this panic mode, right? We are drowning. We want to escape desperately from this position, and yet the train of thought that follows that I am powerless now. This is just not going to go my way, and recognizing that this is a point of stop. Let's reset. Let's try this again, and maybe let's try to be more logical about this and see how I can mechanically unfold this puzzle and escape from this. Right? And this is what jiu-jitsu is all about.
I think that one of the first lessons you learn is that your emotional decisions are usually wrong. Like
Yep.
when you,
I mean,
whenever
I'm
you,
laughing, but this is so true.
That's life, though, isn't it?
like anytime you flail in a submission in jiu-jitsu, something bad happens and you don't get out, you know? Like you don't get out and you probably get hurt also.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like if you're going to work through something, you can, you know, and you know, granted, like when you're escaping submission, sometimes you have to kind of like force it a little bit, you know, but most of the time just moving for the sake of moving is not what you want to do.
So
So I
again,
think
I'm going to ask you the same question. Why the hell are we so stupid? I mean, why? But like, if you look at, and this is not take away from anybody. I don't want to be taken in a negative context here, but there's a human nature. We come in for first day, first week, first month, and we have this oftentimes unrealistic expectation that we will outpower, outspeed, outsmart some of the other guys who've been on the mat for a very long time, and oftentimes this unwillingness to be open-minded sets us back, doesn't it?
I agree. I think that you have to learn how to be flexible with everything, including your own lack of knowledge. So like, you know, it's I think that it's really hard, especially as like an adult too. I think as a kid, like I used to teach kids, and when I would teach kids, I would just be like, "Hey, don't do that anymore." And they would like for you know, not behavioral things, if you like
Mm-hmm.
for behavioral things for whatever, kids will just keep going. But for like techniques, I'd be like, "Hey, don't do that." And then next thing I know, like they're impossible to armbar or whatever. Versus like when you're an adult, you come in with a lot of habits, with your own
Mm-hmm.
worldview, and it's like it's so much harder to work with people when they've got like their own life experience that they're dealing with, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, trying to work through that. Whereas like instead of just taking jujitsu for what it is, which is just a grappling art, right? That you need to learn how to do. It's like it's not a like it's an operating system that you need to understand, and it doesn't care about what you know your belief about toughness is, or you know what you care or what you think about or whatever. Jiu-jitsu is just a system, and you need to learn how to it's a game. You need to learn how to play the game, and that's the whole thing. If you learn how to play the game, you'll get good results. If you don't learn how to play the game because of whatever reason, you will not get good results.
Is that your advice to everybody?
Learn how to play the game.
I like it.
That's my life advice too. I think that it's good
Learn
life
how to
advice.
play a game. Learn how to play a game. So, with that being said, is there room to manipulate this whole system? Is there a way to speed up your process or slow it down for those who desire? Or do you need to know the whole game?
Well, I think that with jujitsu, I think that there's always something more to learn. So the game never really ends. I think that is that kind of what you mean? Like, is there a way to learn jiu-jitsu faster?
Well, yeah, because look, if it's a game, if I can understand how this works, then I know all of it, isn't it? I mean,
I think knowing and doing are different things. Like, I feel
okay,
like for me, I know more jiu-jitsu than I'm able to do.
explain that, because
Like,
I'm actually now we're going deep again. Explain that. What do
uh,
you mean by that?
so like for me, like when I show up to the gym, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna like, what I'm working on. Like, and at B team, the training is very like kind of open. So it's like if I want to do the class, I can do the class, or if I want to just drill whatever I want to drill, I can do that as well. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like I've even had the like misguided thought. I'm like, I know everything. And it's like it's not that I know a lot of I don't know everything, first of all. That's wrong. But I know a lot of stuff, but I'm not able to execute it on resisting opponents. And then I'm able to execute some things on resisting opponents, but I'm not able to execute them on high level resisting opponents. So like knowing concepts, knowing techniques is like step 1, but there are so many more steps to mastery than just understanding.
But now that's becoming confusing for those who just starting this.
Mhm.
So we have, thousands of people listening right now, and Joe Schmo sitting there. This is his first weekend. He was like, wait a minute. First, you tell me to understand things. Then you tell me that understanding things is not enough. Now I have to do something else because what I understood is not working. So why in the world I'm understanding things if this is useless or if it's still not going to work? Like this jiu-jitsu things is becoming very complicated here. No.
I mean, I think that it's as complicated as you make it. So like for me, I like to make things complicated because it makes them fun for me. But I think that if we really want to make it simple, you need
Yeah.
to understand and you need to execute, and that's the whole thing.
Do you think that part of that process is really trusting the system, trusting your instructors, and trusting your training
Yes.
partners, right? Not overthinking. Is this where you're going with this? I mean, there is a
Yes.
recipe. Like, do we need to? Let me ask you this: do we need to reinvent the wheel when we train, or should we be copying things off of other people who have done this before?
I think that as a beginner, you should be copying because I think that you don't know enough to invent anything that is like going to make sense,
Mm-hmm.
I think that when you get to like a baseline level of understanding, you can start to maybe play and reinvent the wheel a little bit. That's where something like the buggy choke comes from, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
side control is a bad position. Like this is not like an ideal, like this is not like the
Mm-hmm.
best thing to do, but it's still like a valid thing that comes. It's kind of like a triangle. If we do a triangle from
Mm-hmm.
side control, and we know a bunch of different things, and
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to put them together because we understand kind of basic concepts.
Continuous evolution. This never ends, does it?
No, it never ends.
Also, at the same time, though, as I'm thinking about this, and as you continue emphasizing this ongoing, continuous growth, do you think this is one of the main reasons why jiu-jitsu is complex and it's at times even overwhelming? I mean, let's like be being honest about these things. It's fun. There's no question about this. Like it's fun, right? And it's very mentally and physically stimulating. Can draw multiple benefits to individual on different levels. Now, it could be overwhelming, couldn't it?
It can definitely be overwhelming, but I think that, and this is something that I wish I had thought about sooner, is I think that I kind of found peace in knowing that I don't need to know everything today. Like
Mm.
if you continue, like, I think most people overestimate what they can learn in a day, but most people underestimate what they can learn in 1 year or several years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like I'm doing a seminar at your gym in a couple weeks, and we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be talking about a leg lock system. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that ideally everyone is going to leave the seminar understanding the leg lock system. But what about like attacking the back or you don't need, that's a different day, right? The way that you really learn jujitsu is you just commit to this long-term process where you don't need to learn everything in a day. You learn it over a extended period of time, and you have to kind of accept that that's the way it is.
And that might be the more difficult part of jiu-jitsu as is, the ability to improve 1% at a time, chipping it away, however you want to slice this, but just the perspective of this will take more than a day, and unlike Instagram, you're not going to get instant results, even though it might look cool, right? I mean, in a broader way, looking at this, it's more of would you consider it as more of a lifestyle in a sense, or a long-term life process?
I think that in my experience, everything that is worthwhile in life takes a long time to achieve.
Now
Whether it's
look
like
at
a good relationship, whether like I write outside of jujitsu, I've been doing that for 4 years, and I think that I was talking to my girlfriend the other day, and like the I said, we were talking about like my first article versus like the stuff that I write now, and it's like that takes so long to like and it's a never ending process, and jujitsu is the same way. And like you can like you have to kind of commit to like anything that you really want out of this life, like anything that's worth achieving is going to take a really long time to achieve.
what's so satisfying about writing.
um I mean, it's not satisfying for everybody, but like what I really like about it
For
is
you,
it's
why
yeah.
do you dig it? Why writing?
I think that I'm passionate about storytelling, and I've always been passionate about storytelling even before I started doing jujitsu. And so writing is kind of an outlet for that I, you know, couldn't really find through jujitsu.
What's your process of writing? Like how does this work? And I know few actually writers and authors, a couple of my students do it, and it's
Mhm.
always interesting to pick their brain. Main reason why sourcing that question is I'm curious what goes on in your mind, as you sit down with a blank sheet of paper and a pen in your, or however you do it.
Mhm.
What's going through your mind when you're putting the words out.
So I think that one thing that I try to avoid doing is I pretty much never will sit down with a blank sheet of paper, because I think that is the foundation of like all writer's block, is like sitting down and trying to come out, like waiting for brilliance to hit me, because it's not coming. If you wait for it, it's not coming. So like I'll go for a walk, or maybe sometimes I'll just be like driving home from training and I'll get an idea or like something like that, and I write the idea down. Sometimes that one thing I do a lot is I like text it to myself, and then I have like a message, and I'll like take an idea and I'll like sit down with an idea and I'll kind of riff off of the idea. And then I've got different structures and formats, and then it's like, am I writing short form, am I writing long form, like what is the aim of the piece? So I'll sit down with like an idea and a goal, and I'll kind of try to work toward a something that is worth reading, hopefully.
Almost like jiu-jitsu, isn't it?
It's very similar to jiu-jitsu. Very similar.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how life takes us in these different directions, and yet the similarities between what we do and how we do it, we kind of gravitate into the same processes and same anchor points, if you will. No?
Yeah, it's like and I didn't realize how similar they were at first. Like I always liked writing because it was like different from jujitsu. But
Mm-hmm.
like it kind of hit me one day, like probably about like 6 months in, I was like, oh, this is the same as training. It's just a different kind of training. It's not physical, it's mental, but it's like the stuff that you learn from doing writing can help you with jujitsu, and the stuff that you can learn from doing jujitsu can help you with writing or any other like pretty much any other pursuit, any other
Yeah.
craft.
Do you find it refreshing to get your stuff out of your head onto the paper?
Yes, it's like it's therapeutic. Like it's people say like jujitsu is therapeutic. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
writing is like actually therapeutic. I think
Is
that
it?
jujitsu is more like it's like exercise. It's like a band-aid kind of, like it makes you feel better. Whereas
Mhm.
like writing, you like process problems, which is what I think therapy is supposed to be.
Well, look at you writing things, putting things out there, really having such a refreshing approach to life and jiu-jitsu, and I mean clearly shows with some of the success that you have encountered in the past couple of years. I mean, driving and chasing that um well that growth, because I feel like the big source of this conversation, or big core of this conversation, is all about us getting a little bit better every single day, isn't it?
I think so. I think also too that something that's important to address is that there's like no, like it's okay to be like imperfect when you're on these like pursuits. Like it's okay to have slip ups and bad days. And I think that a lot of people, like when we think about like any sort of endeavor where we're trying to improve ourselves, we kind of like romanticize it a little bit. And I think that a lot of people forget about how like grimy and like painful these pursuits can be. You know, like jujitsu, it's like the pursuit of jujitsu, right? Like we were talking a lot about like learning and having a growth mindset, and it's and like overcoming and all these things. And it's like that's like how I try to be, but like there are some days where I go to the gym and I just like get my ass kicked and I'm like, oh man, I suck, you know? And it's like that's part of the growth, is like having those
Hmm.
feelings that you're not doing well enough, and that you're not like, you know, being unhappy with yourself is part of being happy with yourself.
Well, and again, that's the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Is how you view, what's your perspective and perception of those events, those experiences, right? One can say,
Mm.
listen, I suck at this, and the other one will say, well, this is where I could improve. And it could be exactly same event, it could be exactly same scenario. How we look at it, how was our interpretation of all of this, and most importantly, what we do from that point on really dictates how this continues will unfold, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the every sort of like circumstance that you find yourself in, you kind of have like the choice of like, okay, am I gonna look at this like a good thing or like a bad thing? And I'm gonna like, am I gonna like beat myself up over this, or am I gonna just kind of, because either way, time is going to pass and you're gonna get past the thing, right? So you can like
Yeah,
either way, it's gonna be like every competition, every loss, like it's done, right? That
you can't go back.
you can't go back. It's done.
No, it's
Um,
over. Mm.
so you have to like, you can either like beat yourself up over it and make yourself miserable, or you can just kind of take it for what it is, which is data, and you can just move forward from there.
Yeah.
That is what I try to do, and it is not always easy, but that is kind of the what I found to be the best approach.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. And Gary always says you can do hard things. He keeps telling all of our kids, or at least he used to, sitting back there.
Yeah, I don't want to contribute much because I'm worried about the editing process, but so I'm going to be quiet. But yeah, absolutely, we can all do hard things.
Chris, before we start slowly wrapping this up, we've been at this nearly an hour. I have to ask you, what is up with the yellow hair?
Oh, the yellow hair. That was
That was a couple years back, right? I
yeah,
mean,
it was a couple of years back. I was, especially like around Chicago, I was known as like the blonde hair kid.
I know. I was like, I gotta ask him about this because there was, there was a look, the look,
It
right?
was, yeah.
What was the
It's
thought behind all this?
you know what's funny? Like a lot. It's funny now. Like we're talking about all these things that I've like thought pretty deeply on at different points. That I was not something I thought deeply on.
That
I
was
was
a
just
very
like,
shallow decision.
it was just like, oh, it looks cool. I want to try it. And then I did it, and I was like, okay, it looks cool, but I want it longer. And then I just next thing I knew, I had this long mane that was blonde, and it was a whole thing. I
I don't,
definitely won't be going back to it, but it was a phase.
I don't know. It sounds to me like you thought about it quite a bit. There was a whole thinking thing. Getting
There
yellow,
was
getting
thinking.
longer.
I was just like, I think that this is right.
Well, good for you. Good for you. That was a big milestone for you. So, but so listen, Chris. As we wrap this up, what we do at the end of every episode,
Mhm.
we have a question for you from a previous guest. He
Okay.
had no idea that you will be answering it. So think of it as question completely in blind. And Gary's going to take a lead on this. Gary?
Yeah, for sure. Here we go. So this is from Kenny Kim. And Kenny wants to know what you feel are the benefits of gi and no gi, and why have you chosen one versus the other?
Oh, there you go. You're getting
That's
on the spot
interesting.
right now. Getting on the spot right now.
Yeah, so I don't train in the gi much at all anymore, but I did train in the gi pretty much exclusively for about 5 years, I think, 4 or 5 years. I think that there are benefits to both. I think that I did gi. I think that the gi tended to make me more positionally oriented because I think that like for me, like in nogi, a lot of people say I have very good escapes, like back escapes and turtle escapes and stuff like that. I think that escapes are so much harder in the gi. I think that escaping bad positions is way harder, and holding good positions is easier. So I think that the gi will make you more positionally oriented. I think that no gi, no gi because leg locks. I think that people in the gi don't do leg locks. It's just not part of the rules, and they're very limited. And you can't do heel hooks, and like certain ankle locks are illegal, and all these different things. Like my Aoki lock is illegal in the gi, but no gi doesn't matter. So I think leg locks is a big part of no gi. Also, the ability to scramble, so the ability to make decisions faster, like being able to kind of move quicker is part of no-gi. So I think that there are benefits to both. I think that the reason that I chose no-gi was there was a couple of reasons. I was better at it from the beginning, like because I wrestled in high school. So I wasn't like a great wrestler. I didn't go to state or anything like that, but like it just felt more natural because I had done it longer, So that was why I chose no-gi. But also too, I just felt like the future of professional submission grappling has been trending towards no-gi. So like all the biggest events, ADCC, like Polaris, the Who's Number One is exclusively no-gi now. So like professional jiu-jitsu is more no-gi. And there are gi events, but the volume of professional events in no-gi is higher. And I was like a brown belt, like doing well in the gi, but I was also like, I want to do this and I want to like try to get some money from it. So let's do no-gi. And I was like, I'm better naturally at no-gi. So that was kind of what I gravitated towards.
I'll put you on a spot right now. Are you ready?
Mhm.
Do you think the gi is going to fade away at some point of time?
No. I think that hobbyist grapplers tend to enjoy both. I think that also too, like the average like older practitioner, like someone who's like in their 30s or 40s and is like training for a hobby, the gi seems to be very popular among that crowd, and so I don't think that it's going to go away. Also too, I think that traditionalists will like keep it around, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I always like make jokes about people being like old school or whatever, but I think that it like I like the gi. It's fun. It's good. I like if I eventually own a gym, I will have gi classes. I'm not like anti gi. I do no gi because that's where my career has taken me. But I like the gi. I think it's good for the sport.
Are you dropping as a hint that you're opening up an academy?
Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. Maybe one day.
I'm just listening very carefully for rumors right now. I'm just. But
Don't worry.
also, well, let me ask you this: do you think that every competitor, every person who brings or finds a success professionally should have, or should be chasing opening the academy and sharing that experience that they've had with others, or is that exclusive, or they are separated in a sense of
They're different.
competing
They're different.
versus teaching?
It's very different. Like I think that the mindset of a coach and the mindset of an athlete are very different. And I think that jiu-jitsu is the only sport where the coach and the competitor are like sometimes mixed together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you should like I taught full time for a few years when I was in Chicago, and now I'm pretty much competing full time and then doing my writing. But I think that you shouldn't don't open an academy unless that you want to open an academy. Don't open an academy because like you want to train somewhere or whatever,
Yeah.
Like don't open an academy because you want to make money from jiu-jitsu. That's like, I feel like those academies never do very well. The academies that do well are the ones that are run by people who love teaching jiu-jitsu to like first day people. Because like as a high level competitor, when you open an academy, your students are not going to be like blue and purple belts who know your fancy reverse berimbolo or whatever. Your students are going to be people who are learning like how to shrimp and how to hip escape and stuff like that. So you have to learn how to love working with beginners, not just creating a gym to have somewhere to train.
Yeah. No, and we have Gary. Who was this? Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Zanji that talked about?
Yeah, one of your favorite quotes.
Yeah. The competitor is a selfish act. It's all about me, and teaching is selfless act. It's all about everybody else besides me, and oftentimes that conversation comes up on the show often, but that transition between competitor and then teaching, being an instructor, being a leader, at times is difficult for those who go through it, simply because it's a very different skill set, very different approach.
I think that, I mean, a lot of like, it is a transition. I think that a lot of professional level competitors have made that transition pretty well. There's a lot of like professional competitors who end up becoming good coaches and have successful academies, and they're like happy, and they're not, they don't resent their lives because they did it. But there are some who are like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, and now I'm stuck with this academy, and all I know how to do is grapple, and I'm stuck. And so I think that you have to be self-aware enough to know if that's something you really want.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill. It's definitely a process that one needs to develop over a period of time. And you bring up a very good point. If there's no passion, it's just like any other job, actually, right? Like, I don't know, if you don't like writing, why would you be a writer? Why don't you do something that you really enjoy? And it kind of goes into the simple fact of life is short. So we should put effort into things that we are passionate about, things that we love.
Amen to that.
Hey, listen, let's finish on a high note here. Chris, listen, I'm going to see you, well, as this is releasing the week off, but
Okay.
as we're recording this, just in a couple weeks, you're coming to RŌL Academy to do a seminar. Everybody's stoked. We have a bunch of ice that we're going to need after that because nobody's going to walk after that event. So
looking forward to it.
But listen, it's going to be phenomenal. I'm looking forward to having you here and really going through the experience, learning from you. And I know that and everybody who is attending this is going to love it simply because of what you just shared, what's in your mind and the way how you approach life and jiu-jitsu. So I truly appreciate this. If anybody wants to find you, where are you at? Are you social media? You're on the West Coast now, on the other side of the country, I should say. But are you accessible, social media, websites? Where are you at?
Yeah, so I am Chris M. Wojcik on Instagram. I am also the man behind the Grappler's Diary on Instagram. And then I have a newsletter that goes out every Friday that's called the Grappler's Diary, and it's on Substack. And then I'm also on, Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, just my name. And then mostly just working on my newsletter. And then I have some clients who I'm writing for as well right now. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I have an instructional out as well. It's called Don't Stand Up. It's on BJJ Fanatics. It is about not standing up and playing from the guard.
That's it. Well, as always, go ahead.
One final thing I wanted to say that I think is funny is it just hit me. I'm going to be doing the seminar at your gym next weekend, and the first time, I don't even know if you remember, you taught a seminar at Jeff's when I was a blue belt, and I was at that seminar, and so it's like it's just funny how it's full circle.
Well, there you go. Yeah, let's. Yeah, when was this? What year was this?
Oh my God, it was like.
Was this at the original location? Like, you guys were sharing with a striking place, with a boxing place. It was behind the wall. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. I remember. Yeah, I was much younger and better looking back then. Oh, man, I do remember that. Yeah, I remember.
I think you showed Kimura stuff, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's weird that you remember things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at that. Look at that. Nice big circle. I love it. Well, listen, it will be my honor to learning from you and picking your brain. It's going to be phenomenal as you visiting us here back
gonna
in
be awesome,
Chicago.
man.
Yeah,
Looking forward to it.
absolutely. Listen, Chris, thanks for being here. Thanks for your last 60 so minutes, sharing your philosophy, your life, your experiences. What a great conversation. And, as I'm thinking about what we just talked about, I mean, I'll be sitting back and just enjoying watching the progress and the evolution of Chris that is to be happening, that is about to happen, and over next few years, because I think some great things are coming your way, and it's going to be very refreshing to see you succeed as you go through this process. Gary, you want to chime in?
Yeah, real quick. Two things. One, I'm glad we got to talk about Jeff so much. Jeff got me started as well.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Through a recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Jeff is one of the most, he's just a great guy, right? One of the most genuine people. So I'm glad we got to talk about Jeff. But Chris, thank you so much. You're talking to a couple of older guys here, and I always
Wait. One older guy and the other one.
Compared to Chris, you are an old guy. I hate to break the news to you. But I always appreciate it so much when somebody of the younger generation is so thoughtful. And not, and kids, us old guys give the kids a bad rap, but that's just not true. It's a stereotype. So I appreciate you coming to this with that forethought and being so willing to share with everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Right. Appreciate you having me on.
Chris, let's wrap this up. We'll see you in a couple weeks, and keep on doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you. This was great. See you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.